Apple is really not doing some good things, and it's in some troubled waters at the moment, especially with creators. Because I was listening to the podcast, the ATP podcast, Accidental Tech Podcast, actually a great podcast, recommend you to listen to it. I'll put it in the notes below. Basically, we know that Apple takes 30% of any in-app purchases that happen with an app through the Apple Store. And obviously, Apple controls the Apple Store. And they take 30% of that cut if they decided to put your app in the Apple Store. They'll take 30% of any in-app purchases. Patreon has an app where you can go there, and obviously you can sign up to any subscription for any of your favorite creators. And obviously you can, pay obviously through your membership through that Patreon app on iOS. But Apple's never taken 30% of those purchases because obviously, why would you take it? It's not an in-app purchase. The money's going to Patreon and then distributed to creators, and then Patreon already is taking a cut because they created the platform. But now Apple wants to take a cut of that. So basically, the cut, instead of being, I think Patreon takes 30% before they send the money out to creators. Basically, Apple wants to take more than Patreon if they want to keep the app. I don't know, it's weird, but I gotta go to work. This is too much this time in the morning. Had a pretty quiet day at work, so I had time to read up a little bit on the whole Patreon against Apple thing. So let's actually read to it in real quick. So basically it says, and starting from November 2024, Apple will require Patreon to pay a fee on any products and new memberships purchased through the Patreon iOS app. So this basically means that any purchase done before, Patreon doesn't have to pay tax, the Apple tax on it, but any subscriptions or any sort of payments that happen through the Patreon iOS app, Patreon will have to pay money. And Patreon has put out kind of like a statement on some sort of kind of like fix for the creators, that the creators can increase the prices just on the iOS app so they can make up for the 30% that they have to pay. Basically, Apple just not doing the right thing and just going after, almost fell, and just basically going after a stupid amount of money, or just a lot of money really. They just have a full-on shakedown on Patreon to make them pay for it. But the problem is, compared to other apps like Subway Surfers and other games that you have in-app purchases, you're paying for something that is going to someone, but you're paying for a product. The problem with Patreon, and this case, is taking money away from creators, kind of, and taking money away from Patreon as well. Again, not a problem because they're a massive company, but they also are a company that allows a lot of creators to make a living. And the money they're making and the money that people are paying for, sometimes they're not paying for a service, sometimes they're just paying a subscription on Patreon to support their favorite creator, so the favorite creator can make a living out of it, or make videos, or make exclusive videos for their communities. It's just taking money out of creators. And then the thing is, in this case, obviously, I don't know how much of a market share or how much money Patreon makes through the iOS app, and how money it kind of makes through it. I really don't know. I really don't agree with it. I don't have a Patreon yet, but this is something that, if I was a creator on Patreon with a decent size, I would just, I don't know. I don't know what I would do, to be fair. Definitely would be talking to Patreon, but it's just like, I would tell my audience to be like, just don't pay for membership through the iOS app, because it's going to be 30% more expensive, because I have to put my prices up just on the iOS app, so then I can still get the same cut. Because basically, through the iOS app, Apple will be taking a bigger cut than Patreon is taking from the creators. I think, again, kind of like I mentioned earlier in the video, Patreon takes 30% of it by providing the platform, payment systems, and the whole thing, the whole platform basically. And then they give the creator 70%, which is again a fair deal because you're probably paying 30% for payments, for payment processing, the communities, not the community itself, but the community platform and the whole platform and logging in and that whole developer side of a website. And then now Apple or any kind of new subscribers you get through Patreon, through the iOS app, Apple will take 30% of that. In other news, I had a pretty chill day at work and I really have not much else to do for the rest of today or tonight. I might actually go for a walk later on. And the biggest problem with all of this is that Apple is basically in a monopoly, or like the guys on the podcast, the ATP podcast, call it a duopoly, because basically Apple owns 50% of market share, and then there's Android. I know that's not quite literal, but Apple owns a big portion of market share, and then you have Android that owns the other portion of the market share. I'm not talking about phones specific and brand specific like Google, Samsung, Xiaomi or any of those brands. I'm talking about the operating system. There's only 2 operating systems that own basically the whole world, which is Android and Apple. At the moment in the UK and in Europe, you now have another option to download apps, which is through the Alt Store, which is a new app that the EU put in place, so you can put it through. But in America, there's only one way to download phone applications for your phone, for your iPhone, and that's just through the Apple Store. If you want to download an app, you have to do it through the Apple Store, and Apple will take a cut of any in-app purchases that happen in there. They're really not doing anything to provide a better service at the minute, and they're just, again, I'm kind of basically saying exactly what the ATP guys said on the podcast. I will link this episode below. They basically said, yeah, that Apple is just doing a shakedown. They're making 50% of their money through phones and products by selling iMacs, Macs, MacBooks, iPhones, AirPods and all that stuff. And the other 50% is just by shaking down businesses and pretty much just taking a 30% cut of any in-app purchases, regardless of what the app is. Whatever the app sells, they're gonna take it. And now they're doing it with Patreon. So it'll be interesting to see if Patreon, the company, do something, whether they're gonna pull their app off the Apple Store, or whether they're gonna just put the prices up and gonna tell the creators, which they already have, but actually put it into play that if you want to keep the similar cut that you kept before this came in, you're gonna have to raise your prices, but you're only gonna have to raise your prices just to the iOS system. You don't have to raise your prices for anybody else, just for people that sign up through the application that people download it on their iPhones, which is, it's just silly. It makes no sense. I don't get it. God, I've never thought I'd see Golden Acre Park this quiet before. It's really quiet, which makes it great to vlog and do this type of stuff. But really, what is the actual fix for this thing is, I guess, getting more competitors. But again, we're in a bit of a duopoly within Android and Apple, so it's just going to be interesting. Again, it's something that I really don't like about it, and I hope we can get a fix. And I'm glad, just wondering whether I see people around, and I'm glad that the internet is free for everybody. So if not, everybody use browsers. Also, this is a beautiful time of day. I must start vlogging out on walks at this time even more, because it's really quiet and really chill. Like, after a day of working, just coming here and doing this is amazing. Like, look at all this. Like, if you live in the area, or if you live in the area, or even within 20 minutes, it's about 20-minute drive from me, or 20 to 15 minutes, Golden Acre Park is a great walk. how quiet it is too. But the real question is, how do we fix all of this? How do we fix Apple's monopoly and Apple taking this much tax? Again, it's not technically a monopoly because they have competition, but they're taking 30% from creators, which as an aspiring creator or as a creator that's maybe wanting to turn into a full-time job, it's kind of annoying that you have to increase your prices just for those that are going to download the Patreon app on their iPhones, and those people that have an iPhone, the Patreon app, and are patrons to you, are going to have to pay a little bit more to make up for the cut. So what do you think? What do you think is a fix? What do you think the fix should be? And what do you think, and when this should stop? When should it happen? Apple has chosen not to take a single penny or hasn't taken anything from Patreon up until now. And now from November of this year, they're going to start taking that to new subscriptions and users. And that's going to be a lot of money. But I've actually enjoyed this vlog. I've actually enjoyed filming this vlog today because it's really quiet. I can film it outside and I can actually prep my shots a little better. So I might have to start doing that. But right, home time, and I'll see you on the next one.